Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we're previewing the running back position, which looks pretty different on paper heading into 2023. Will the rushing attack be as good as it was in 2021 and 2022 with a new look team? All that and more on this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcoming Eagles fans to a Monday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase alongside Gino Camilleri. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And every day this week, we are going to be previewing Philadelphia Eagles training camp, which, crazy enough, is 1 week away from tomorrow. Next Tuesday, players will report. Am I correct there, Gino? Right? Next Tuesday. Am I losing my mind?
We came to that realization, yes.
Yes,
the 24th.
I wanted to make sure because last time I got the date wrong. This time we are correct, and it's crazy that we're that close, but we previewed running back, I should say quarterback on Friday. Today we're talking running back, tomorrow receiver. Going to roll through the entire 2023 roster. And as I mentioned, before the theme, this team on paper at running back looks very different for the first time in a long time. Even, going all the way back to 2019, you knew Miles Sanders was RB1. He brought you the most consistency at the position that they had had since LaShawn McCoy. And Boston Scott has been here since that point. Kenneth Gainwell took over for Jordan Howard as that, third guy in that rotation. And so you kind of knew what you had for years. Now it's completely different. Miles Sanders is gone. Sure, you have Gainwell and Scott, but your two lead backs now, two brand new players, Swift and Rashaad Penny. And although it is different, I really like what the Eagles did this offseason, the approach they took at running back. It's inexpensive. They're barely spending $3 million combined on Penny and Swift. I think it's as efficient as it was with Miles Sanders. And to me, it's more versatile. So I'm really excited about this group.
Jeff Darlington had a very intriguing tweet today, and I saw you interacted with it as well. If the devaluation of running backs continues, I wonder if the league and the union would ever negotiate a rule limiting the number of years for a running back's first contract. It would cause a running back to get to market faster and also makes teams less inclined to draft and dump. Well, Lou, who was the person that really started this trend and one of the front runners? It's Howie Roseman. He has always been that way. He hasn't paid big money to a running back since, who you mentioned, LaShawn McCoy. Even as good as Miles Sanders was, look at his market. We were talking.
He got the most guaranteed money of any running back in free agency this year.
He did.
So Howie was never going to do that for as good as he was.
And we were talking a few years ago, is he going to get Christian McCaffrey money? Well, I don't think any running back ever again is going to get Christian McCaffrey money. And the Derrick Henry contracts won't be around for much longer. And a lot of it comes down to how teams are handling it. The Eagles have always been that team, right? Even going back to the Westbrook days, you still had Carell Buckhalter, you still had Deuce Staley, you still had a lot of those guys that they interchanged there. And that's what it's been more recently as well. Even in the years when they didn't have those big names, Lou, you're still running Josh Adams, Wendell Smallwood. They still had Darren Sproles in the mix there as well. They were trying their best, right? They were trying to go through this committee approach so they didn't put all their eggs in one basket.
It's also easier when you always have a mobile quarterback and an elite offensive line. So the Eagles have been even less inclined to invest in this position than any team.
And they're not going to moving forward. And how they are making their money here is trying to find those guys which may be on the end of their first contract and trying to get paid. But for running back, what is it really getting paid these days? But they are guys that are trying to work their way into a bigger contract. Rashaad Penny, Swift, Kenny Gainwell still on his rookie deal. They had that with Miles Sanders last year. And what they want out of these guys is a collective of efficient players. Whether it's efficiency in the pass game, the run game, you just have to be efficient behind this Eagles offensive line. And how they are doing it, Lou, is by putting together a pitching staff. These guys all throw different things at you, right? And that's the exciting part about it. As much as you and I were proponents of Miles Sanders, we
Still
like
am.
this
Yeah.
backfield right now a lot more because of the depth, right? And
you're
because
getting
of the versatility.
Oh, yeah, you're getting almost the same amount of efficiency, if not more, with Penny and Swift. You're getting more versatility with pass catching when it comes to DeAndre Swift. And again, you're like, this is as good as you can do when it comes to bargain hunting at this. Like when you're saying we're going to go cheap at running back, some teams genuinely, like the Eagles in 2018, I mean, that wasn't on purpose. They wanted Ajayi and Clement to work out. Neither one did. So you had Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood. But DeAndre Swift and Rashaad Penny being you punting at this position when it comes to financial investments, and you have, I think, a deeper, more versatile backfield than you did before. I mean, this isn't always the reality, but I think Howie Roseman knocked it out of the park with this approach. And we'll see what actually happens. I mean, on paper, you got to see what happens actually during the regular season. Could Rashaad Penny get hurt again? Absolutely. DeAndre Swift, could he deal with injury? Sure. Could neither one really mask that or make up that production of Sanders? And Kenneth Gainwell goes back to who he was last regular season? Yeah, of course there's that possibility. But for a spot that, again, you don't need to invest that much in right now, and that's the reality across the NFL, the Eagles still found a way to bring in some incredibly explosive players. I don't know if they're going to surpass last year, Gainwell, Scott, and Sanders combined for 1,726 rushing yards. Is this group going to get there? I'm not sure, but I'll tell you what, I think all-purpose yards, I think they're going to surpass what the trio did last year because of the receiving game.
I was just going to say that, and especially with DeAndre Swift, right? Respectively,
Yeah.
2020, he goes through 357 in 13 games. 2021, he goes for 452. 2022, he goes for 389. So let's say he gets 400 in the air. He averages around 500 on the ground. There's 900 yards right there. Rashaad Penny, he's been, when healthy, one of the most efficient runners in the sport. And let's look at his 2021 season through 10 games, ran through 749 yards on 119 carries. Add that with Kenneth Gainwell, who last year put up 240 yards on the ground, 29 in the air. You're talking about a collective unit with Boston Scott as well, maybe a sprinkle of Trey Sermon in there for a game or two. That for sure, all purpose, should be on track to at least hit that number. That should be your floor right away. And that's what Howie Roseman's Moneyball approach should be. Just like that scene in Moneyball. Can these three guys do what this one guy does? And that's exactly what the Eagles are doing, all for less of a cost than Miles Sanders is getting paid this year. And they have all 6 of these guys that we're going to talk about on this show under contract for very cheap because of simple economics. The running back position, it is flooded. There are still guys out on the market right now that you could go and sign, and
it's just too easy to find production. Yeah, and look, it does suck for these players, but this is the right roster building approach. Like the Eagles, 100%. What they're doing at running back is exactly the correct way. And I'll say that even if none of these guys pan out this year, if Penny's hurt all year again, and Swift is not nearly the player Miles Sanders was, and Miles is killing it in Carolina, and I think he's going to have a good year with the Panthers this year. I think Sanders has always been a good player. I'll still tell you every single time this is the approach to take at running back for sure. It doesn't mean they're not important, and having a good one will not help. It absolutely will. These guys are going to be big, and I think it's going to add an element to this Eagles offense this year. We've said it on shows before that they didn't have over the past few years with receiving backs. But at the same time, financially, this is the right way to do it. And I still think they got an incredible group for the money they spent. When it comes to like trios they've had, right? Like 2017, they had LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement. You look back to 2015 as well with DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, and Sproles. That's kind of the two ends of the spectrum when it comes to like Eagles trios where they go with a heavy rotation. I'm very confident, this is going to end up more like the 2017 group than that 2015 group, right? Both approaches were the same, though. It's, in some injury-prone players, different styles. You go cheaper in money outside of the Murray contract. But again, with 2015, the injuries happened, the regression in play. 2017, all those bargains totally panned out. I'm more confident this ends up like that Super Bowl year than the Chip Kelly year.
I totally agree. And we've discussed that we believe that this running back group in total should get you through 17 games. Even if one of these guys goes down, you're still going to have a collective of 3 that you can lean on.
By the way, it's not like Sanders was some healthy, always available running back. I mean, so
DeAndre Swift played more games than him the last 4 years.
Yeah.
We've debunked that many, many times. And I think that's going to be the same type of season you get out of him, probably 13 games. And you hope you can get at least 10 out of Rashaad Penny. Kenny Gainwell, pretty healthy. Boston Scott seems to see the field a lot. I think altogether, by investing that money more in the pass catching positions to the A.J. Browns, the Dallas Goedert, the inevitable Devontae Smith contract, and the positions to take away the pass game are much more important, clearly, than the Eagles wanting to run the ball and stop the run. Even though the Eagles do love running the ball, Howie Roseman doesn't invest in linebacker, doesn't invest in safety, and doesn't invest in running back, and that's just facts.
But this running back group looks really good, and behind an offensive line this talented next to a mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts, I think the sky is the limit for a lot of these young, efficient players. We'll continue to take a look at this room coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Head over to LinkedIn Jobs, then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions. It makes it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then eventually hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. We're back 5 days a week now with training camp next week, Monday through Friday, right here on Locked On Eagles. Today, we are continuing our positional previews, talking about the offensive side of the football. Friday it was quarterback. Today it's a different looking running back room now with DeAndre Swift in and Rashaad Penny in. Miles Sanders out now in Carolina. But they do have 2 of their guys from last year. They have Kenneth Gainwell. They also have Boston Scott, who right now is looking like the 4th running back. He's also going to battle Trey Sermon, who returns after coming into Philadelphia last year. So those are their top 5 guys right now. Are they going to keep 5? I'd say probably more like 4. So it might come down to Scott versus Sermon for that final spot. We talked about Swift and Penny a lot earlier. I will say before we get into like Gainwell, Scott, and Sermon, Penny, the signing of Penny, I think because of the Swift trade and because he's from Philadelphia, he's rocking #0. He's versatile. He can catch the football. He's definitely a flashy player. They traded for him at the draft. All these reasons. The Penny move is almost, I feel like, gone under the radar now. And I think people don't, and because he's injured so much, people probably just did not watch him a lot. I don't think people understand who this kid can be when he is, and it's a massive if he can stay healthy. But when he is on the football field, this guy, again, statistically, is the most efficient running back in the NFL. And in this environment with this offensive line, and if they can keep him fresh in a rotation like they did with Jay Ajayi in 2017, having this kind of player, I think, should not be undersold.
Let me ask you this, Lou. Has Seattle had a top 10 offensive line in the last couple of years?
No.
Have the Eagles had a top 10 offensive line in the last couple of
time.
years? Exactly. And efficiency comes a lot into blending your philosophy, players' skills, and the guys that are leading the way, which are called rhinos in the sport, right? And why do you call offensive linemen rhinos? Because they have the biggest heart. And why are guys like Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson so important, not just to the culture, but the play on the field? Because they're going to do literally anything for the team, and they can do everything for this team. So Rashaad Penny just has to be the player that he was, right, Lou? He doesn't have to do anything fancy. He just has to run behind this offensive line and be him. And I love that you continue to point out how explosive and efficient he is. Look at any advanced analytic chart on EPA, efficiency. Rashaad Penny is at the top. And I know it might come down to Howie Roseman wanting to right the wrongs of Donnell Pumphrey all these years later, getting another San Diego State running back. But he is a gosh darn good runner. And Seattle, they can run the ball, but not like the Eagles. The Eagles do it differently. They're a top 5 running team all day long. Add in Jalen Hurts, add in all these guys. The pressure is going to be off of him. It's not just going to be the Rashaad Penny show. He's going to be able to keep his legs fresh for 10, 11 touches a game, Lou. I think you can get
that's what I want. Yeah.
6.5, 7 yards a carry. That's what
Ajayi was in
for
2017.
Him, right?
I mean, Ajayi had to step up a little bit when Wentz went down because Foles was struggling so
bad.
But
I'd compare him to Blunt, saying that he's
Sure.
the forgotten guy, right? Because when Ajayi came in, that was the nice fancy toy like the DeAndre Swift. Now you have Rashaad Penny, who you got earlier, but at the same time, he could be just as good, if not better.
In that way, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree. I just mean because Ajayi also had incredible efficiency, just could never stay healthy. So you always want to give him the football more because he's so damn good with it every time he touches it. But for the sake of him in the longevity of the season, even in the Super Bowl, he had 7 touches, but still surpassed 70 yards in that game. He was really good. And so that's what I think the approach has to be with Rashaad Penny is don't overload his plate. The good thing is you have DeAndre Swift now. Before Swift, it was going to be tough. Penny was going to probably have to carry the load because out behind him, it's Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, and I like those two, but Penny's clearly the lead workhorse in that situation. He's the new Miles Sanders. Swift totally takes the pressure off Penny now. You can really rotate a 4-man backfield, and that's huge because I think that can get Penny through an entire year. You can, as a starter, Gino, you can probably, like you said, rely on him for 10, 11 games, but in the situation he's currently in, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays every game this year. And having that kind of runner healthy for the playoffs, very important. So I think they're definitely going to take the cautious approach with him. I like what you said with the amount of touches he would get each game. I think that's the right way to do it. And because you don't need him to, carry the load like Miles Sanders did.
And you're going to have your quarterback who believes that the whole thing rests on his shoulders anyway.
Right,
so if anybody's going to take the pressure off in the run game,
that's a 5th runner that you haven't even.
It's going to be your quarterback, right? And the thing is, you need him to be as explosive as possible. And I hate the term that the NBA uses in terms of load management. I think that's just a terrible way to phrase it. I love the term pitch count. He has to be on a pitch count, right,
yes.
Lou? And how did they prolong Jay Ajayi to get the best out of him in that 2017 season? You paired him with 2 other guys that could help ease the burden off of him. And he's a guy that has to remain healthy and running behind this offensive line that will allow him to get to the second level. And when he gets to the second level, that's where you win. If he just continues to get battered and bruised, though, time after time, and you're giving him the ball 20 times a game,
it's the wrong player,
let's say even
that.
15, it's the wrong way to approach. It's the DeMarco Murray approach, right? And at least with these guys, though, the scheme seems to fit how these players actually play, as opposed to DeMarco running outside zone when he's a clear power runner, right?
Sure.
But Rashaad Penny, Lou, could he be in the conversation, hear me out, to potentially lead this team in touchdowns?
I could see that. Yeah, and I could see rushing yards. It depends on what the volume does look like, but yeah, I could see that. I could see him leading this
in the
team
red zone.
yards
Who are you giving the ball to?
No, I agree. Especially if you want to limit Jalen Hurts' workload down there, or at least a little bit more. If you want to reduce that, I could totally see it. So it's going to be interesting. Will he rushing yards? I don't know because of the pitch count that he's probably going to be on, if I would predict that. But touchdowns I could totally see yards per attempt 100%. I think he will probably be your most efficient running back this year running the football. But again, I think Swift will be the quote unquote workhorse within this rotation. Kenneth Gainwell is the other guy, Gino. He's kind of the forgotten man here. And it's interesting. Last year, I think we went into the year with a lot of expectations. I liked what I saw from him his rookie year. Thought a jump was coming. He struggled to run the football a lot in the regular season, but then he blew up in the playoffs. He has that 90-plus yard rushing game against New York. He surpassed 60 yards in the NFC Championship game, over 40 in the Super Bowl as well. Jalen Hurts relies on him a lot, throwing the football in crunch time, 3rd down, 2-minute warning. So it's kind of a mixed bag with Kenny G, like how I don't know which one we're going to get this year. I do think, though, he's definitely the clear number 3 in this backfield.
I don't even know how you label these guys, if it's a 1, 2, or 3, or if it's
I just mean based on probably snaps. If we're doing it with a snap perspective, I'd say I don't know, though, because he's going to be used a lot still on third down and in like 2-minute drills.
He's efficient inside the tackles,
maybe
man.
Not.
And
maybe Penny's third in snaps.
You can't take away what he did down the stretch, and he
he's
arguably
really good in the playoffs.
In the Super Bowl, he's that third down conversion away from like being a big time player in that game.
But now you throw in Swift, who can catch the football. So is his role in that way reduced? It might be.
We'll see how they
interesting.
Negotiate their running styles. Like, is there a certain guy you want to run outside with? Is there a certain guy you want to run inside with? They love to be able to do everything with these guys, though. And that's why I feel like Kenny is going to be in favor of this coaching staff, is because you can do a lot of everything with him, right? DeAndre Swift, the same thing. You could throw him out there and throw him in the pass game, throw him on outside zone. He's going to get outside the tackle box, right? And even our short king, congratulations on getting engaged. Boston Scott can do a lot of those same things as well. So it'll really, to me, Lou, how are you going to use Rashaad Penny as, let's say, not say a workhorse, but half of a workload of a workhorse, right? And then throw those other guys in there that are like your curveball, that's like your slider, that's like your knuckle curve, where you could throw the different aspects of this running back game as a matchup base. Yeah. Because Rashaad Penny's not, I've said he can catch the ball. He has in the past, but out of these three guys that are there, I'd rather give those three guys the ball in the air. And
I could actually see some scenarios, Gino, where, if your second tight end really doesn't pan out a lot this year, would you be surprised if you saw Swift and Gainwell out there at the same time? I mean, Gainwell at times used to line up in the slot. I could see some 22 personnel going down.
You have to, and they've talked 21. About that so much. And you put out two running backs. You can motion Kenny into the backfield. You can even motion DeAndre into the slot. Both of those
Especially
guys.
Especially if Quez doesn't take another step this year and you need some help in the passing game. I could see it.
And with Rashaad Penny in the backfield, Lou, you got two big guys that you're going to have to take down over and over and over again between him and Jalen Hurts, right? If I'm a linebacker and I have to tackle those guys 15 times a game, and then I have to go hawk down DeAndre Swift or Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott in the pass game, that's a lot to ask for.
It's a deep backfield, man. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not a bad problem figuring out what the roles of all these players. And I think it's splitting hairs, honestly. I think it's going to be a pretty even split between the three. Between Swift, Penny, and Gainwell. I think it'll be a pretty good split. Honestly, I think Gainwell can be what you thought Corey Clement was eventually going to become, and he never did. I think Gainwell could be that player. I don't think he's going to be your Darren Sproles ever. That I think you have a better chance of having DeAndre Swift turning into that player, but I think Gainwell could be the Corey Clement of this offense from 2017, and so it's an exciting backfield for sure. The fourth spot is really where the big question mark lies, Gino. So that's what I want to wrap up the show with. It's Boston Scott against Trey Sermon. And I don't know, maybe they could keep 5 running backs. I just can't see it because, I don't know. I mean, Trey Sermon's not really a special teamer, right? And so this is a former third-round pick, though, from the 49ers that has always been efficient when he's out there. Like a lot of these players, he's injured a lot, but he's got a power style that, Scott and Gainwell really don't have. And even you could say Swift, like he has a different element that really only Rashaad Penny has. Is that enough to push Boston Scott, who's been here since 2018, and he's very relied upon, very efficient whenever he touches the football? He can return kicks as well. He's a good veteran presence. I think Scott has the clear advantage at RB4, but Trey Sermon, it's not like this is some random scrub pushing. I mean, this was a former third-round pick that played at a big school, and at the NFL, he's had some success when he's given the opportunity.
Boston Scott's special teams ability will always
it's a big advantage,
team, right?
Yeah.
And especially coming up in big moments and being the giant killer to win, to have a guy who comes up big in 2 games guaranteed every single year
against the division.
In the division, right?
And I feel like Trey might crush in the preseason, so I doubt you're going to be able to stash him on the practice squad.
I think he's going to be a big time recipient of some votes in our Ja'Cory Shepherd Award.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
he's going to absolutely dominate him and Kennedy Brooks. But it's not a bad problem to have those 2 guys back there, right, Lou? Because we know Eagles running backs don't always stay healthy. We know these guys don't always stay healthy. And at the same time, you can always look around to other teams' practice squads where the Eagles are always looking and trying to overturn every stone to find another running back. But if you get 3 out of those 4 big names to land, you'll be all right. And on the back end, It's kind of like pick your cup of tea. Do you want another big runner who can be a bruiser type, take the load off of Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, considering you have the Swift and Gainwell 1-2 punch already, I just
is
can't
it
imagine.
redundant? I don't know.
I think this team loves Boston
great
Scott, though, man.
Team building discussion, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to go 5 at running back, which would be a crazy thing to do unless Boston Scott is your full-time pick and punt returner, where are you going to go light? Are you going to go 2 tight ends? I can't see that happening for how much they include them blocking.
Team, again,
you're going to go 4 wide receivers. I don't think about that either.
I'm not going light to keep running back when I think you could find, if you're in a pinch and you need your 5th running back, with this offensive line and with Jalen Hurts, I'll go find somebody off the streets. There are so many options that you can probably
let Jalen run the football over.
Yeah, you'll be just fine. Yeah, I'm not keeping a 5th guy.
No, there's no reason to, right? But why not keep him on the practice squad? It would be nice to have
if you
5
could.
guys there.
Yeah. And that's why I'm watching Kennedy Brooks maybe even a little more than Trey Sermon, because again, Sermon's
Trey could get poached easy.
I think he's going to get poached. Yeah, that's why I'm more focused on let's see the development of Kennedy Brooks this summer. Maybe he's a guy you can stash on the practice squad, has more of a thumper mentality, right? And so maybe that's your other guy coming off the practice squad.
I totally agree, Lou. And 4 to me is, I would say, the betting favorite.
Yeah.
3 would be an outside dog, but 3 or 4.
Just because of who your 4th is, Boston Scott is, I think, an important piece of this team. I think they think that.
There was an interesting discussion on Twitter as well about the investment that they've given these running backs. They've barely paid Rashaad Penny any guaranteed money. Say that 15 times fast. And DeAndre Swift was traded for a couple of lower round draft picks. I would say DeAndre, in terms of investment, you've put a little bit more into him than you have Rashaad.
Yeah.
But I still think they have big plans for these guys. I think Howie Roseman at the running back position, if anything, in his evolution, Lou, has been deliberate. He wants to go about it a certain way. And I think this year more than ever, he's kind of executed on that, right? He's got 4 guys that I believe his offensive coaching staff can say, we can rely on these guys.
I think it's an unbelievable haul for what they spend. The fact that fact that you're not even spending $3 million and you got DeAndre Swift and Rashaad Penny. Are these top 5 running backs? No, but I think most teams would be very comfortable with those 2 being your top running backs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lou, absolutely. And especially in today's football. If this was 2003, maybe we might be having a different discussion. Let's bulk up a little bit. Let's get a little more size, guys that might be able to sustain a full season. That's why you had Brian. That's why you had Carell. That's why you had Deuce. This is a passing league, athletic league, an efficiency league. That's what these running backs do. You're not going to find the guys that are going to go for 2.3 yards for 15 carries and then all of a sudden go off for a 65-yard, 75-yard carry. They're not going to give a guy that opportunity. If you're not efficient, you're going to get your opportunities taken away, and they're going to find somebody else that can do it because they paid next to a bag of donuts to get these guys, right?
Yeah, I think this isn't a position that's going to break this team, but it can help make it for sure. I mean, it's going to, I think, only help having the new talent that they brought in. I'm really excited to see how it pans out this summer for sure. Tomorrow we'll change gears. We're going back to the passing game. We are previewing wide receiver and tight end right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, Monday through Friday. Gino and I, like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think of this running back group at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.